Hey, what's going on? I'm Vit, and I'm a bit of a Dragoon main, so please pray for me as we go into Dawntrail. As I'm sure you've heard, Dragoon's getting a bit of a rework to the job, to all the actions. We don't really know what extent the rework is going to go to. Is it going to play fairly similarly, or will it play like a whole new job? We just don't know at this point. But in this video, I'm going to go over some of the current problems with Dragoon. I say that in air quotes because I don't really think the problems are big enough to even consider them problems. But it does have some little things here and there that could be improved upon and just expanded into level 100. I also want to talk about some of the things that I hope they really don't touch, because I really like a lot of the way that Dragoon currently plays. And I think a lot of people agree with me on that. So there's a few things that I hope stick around. There are a few little minor changes that I do hope they make. But I'm worried that my minor changes aren't quite enough to justify calling it a rework, but we'll see. And then last but not least, we're going to go over the predictions for new skills. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot, but obviously we saw that one new ability in the benchmark. And we'll talk about that stuff a little bit at the end of the video, but let's just jump in and talk about some of the current issues that Dragoon is facing in Endwalker. All right, so the first issue that we're going to talk about that I hear from a lot of people is just how busy Dragoon is, mainly during the burst. The 2-minute burst does have a lot of instances where you have to double weave your off GCDs between pretty much every GCD throughout the burst. There's very little room for, improvisation. You can kind of move some things around a little bit, but the Dragoon rotation is surprisingly strict with some of the timers. And I think it's okay currently. Like, there's really no issue performing the burst as it stands now, but if they are to add anything moving forward that you need to cram inside that burst, it's just going to get increasingly difficult. So I do think cutting down on at least one OGCD would be nice. And I see a very easy solution for that, and that is just to get rid of Life Surge. If I'm being honest, I think I can speak for most Dragoons here. We're probably not going to miss Life Surge if it goes away. Now, if you're not familiar, this is just an ability that ensures your next GCD is a critical hit. It also makes it heal you a little bit, kind of like if you had Bloodbath on, like a single GCD's worth of life steal. But, like, I don't know, those guaranteed crits are cool and all. You've got 2 charges of it. You basically just put it on Heaven's Thrust and Fang and Claw under your 2-minute burst, or Heaven's Thrust, Wheeling Thrust. Doesn't really make a difference. These two have the same potency. So it's interchangeable, and then you use it once during your 1-minute burst on Heaven's Thrust. So in my opinion, it would make sense to just get rid of it, or another thing they could do is combine it with Lance Charge. So whenever you use Lance Charge, which is your 1-minute buff, it could potentially apply the effect of Life Surge just to those abilities that you would typically use it for. Maybe even just Heaven's Thrust to simplify things a little bit. You're only really going to get one of those under buffs anyway, unless it's timed a weird way where you start on Heaven's Thrust. You might get a second one. But yeah, I don't know. I think just having that effect applied automatically underneath Lance Charge could be a way to get rid of that button but keep the effect. Obviously, if it got applied to all 3 of those buttons, it would probably do a little more damage than it currently does, so they might need to balance around that to some degree. But I don't know. I think if they just applied it to Heaven's Thrust whenever you use Lance Charge, it could be a cool way to solve that and just get rid of Life Surge. I do think there's a bit of skill involved in using Life Surge how it currently is. You obviously need to use it like in between those steps of your combo. And when you're trying to weave in all of your other jumps, your Gear Skogul, your Nostrons, your Stardivers, all your buffs, making sure that you have room when you're at the right part of your combo to weave in that Life Surge It's not rocket science, but like it can delay other buttons that you want to be pressing. A lot of the time there's going to be like 4 things you want to weave all at the same time and you just can't. So you have to make some decisions there. So adding it to Lance Charge would take that decision making away a little bit. But again, I really just don't think Life Surge would be terribly missed. It's probably the least exciting button to push when you're playing Dragoon, and it's just kind of there. So I don't know. That's one thing I would change, and that would get rid of 2 OGCD weaves during your 2-minute burst. It would kind of slim things down a little bit. So I don't know. I expect them to do something with Life Surge. I don't really know what, but that's kind of my first prediction. All right, so my next problem with Dragoon is that it's currently the only melee in the game that does not have a personal shield or mitigation. Sure, it has Life Surge, we just talked about it, but it just heals you a little bit. It's such a negligible amount that it's hardly worth even mentioning. So I'm not going to count Life Surge. When you compare it to things like Ninja's Shade Shift or Monk's Riddle of Earth, or Samurai's Third Eye, Reaper's Arcane Crest. Like, those are actual mitigations, like 20% shields, or like 10% shield, or, 20% mit, or, a shield with a heal over time on it. Like, Dragoon just has nothing. Like, you just hope for the best. I was in DSR 2 weeks ago. We were in phase 7, very end of the fight, 15 minutes in. And I just died by like 3,000 damage. If I just had a shield or something, it would have been fine. Obviously, I could have been, healed slightly better, or maybe moved in a slightly different way where I didn't take quite as much damage. It was during Giga Flares, if you're familiar with that fight. But, having a shield would be really nice. When I was playing Ninja in top, just having Shade Shift to give yourself a little shield could very easily save you in a lot of different instances. And it's just something that's fun to optimize too. So I don't necessarily think that Dragoon needs to get a shield or a mitigation per se. One thing that I think would be fairly interesting is if they drew from what they did with PvP. We're going to jump over to the Wolf's Den real quick, just so I can show this. But in PvP, Dragoon has Horrid Roar, which is basically just mitigation. It does a bit of damage as well. And obviously the PvP version of it is super overtuned compared to what I would expect it to be in PvE. But it's basically just an AOE mitigation. So very similar to like a reprisal. I think it'd be really interesting if they gave Dragoon Horrid Roar and made it work exactly like Reprisal does. So just a AoE 10% mitigation. They recently gave Machinist, what's it called? Dismantle, which is just a 10% single target mitigation. So I think it would be cool if they don't want to give Dragoon a personal shield or mitigation, if they gave it that party mitigation. Because Dragoon's kind of already the more party-wide raid buffer of the melees, to some degree. I think it would be interesting if they played into that and also emphasized like that debuff side of things, or the party support side of things, with a party mitigation that the other melees don't have. I think that could be fun. It would probably make Dragoon super valuable in a party comp. I don't know what effects that would have, if it would make Dragoon like almost a requirement to bring to raid or whatever, but I don't know. I think Horrid Roar, just being able to apply that in dungeons and raids, just having one extra mitigation for your party could be cool. And even if they don't make it a party mitigation, if they just make it a single like personal shield or personal mit, that would be fine too. I really don't care if the balancing of a party mit would be too difficult, but they did it with Machinist, so you never know. That's something I would like to see. It would be fun to be a bit more of a support melee. But who knows? I just think that is a very potentially likely addition to Dragoon's kit coming in Dawntrail. Alright, so this next idea is probably my craziest, most out there part of this whole idea for Dragoon. And that has to do with how Life Surge, or not Life Surge, Life of the Dragon works. This is their gauge. Basically, when you spend High Jump and Mirage Dive, you get 1 eye for your gauge. You need 2. And once you get 2, you can go into your life window with Nostrand and Stardiver. The way this currently works is kind of a pain because there's just no way to generate 2 eyes in your opener. So Dragoon's opener is just naturally very weak because you don't get access to your biggest ability as well as the rest of your burst until potentially 30 seconds, but even more so you want to hold it for your 1 minute burst. So you don't get a burst until 1 minute on Dragoon. Like, you're just noodling around with your opener and then you're holding it when it could come up at 30 seconds. And then from the 1 minute, 2 minute marks and so on in full uptime fights, it works out great. It's balanced around this, so it's really not a problem. It becomes a bit more of a problem in fights like Top, the Omega Protocol, where in the very first phase, there's a super tight damage check. The phase is only 2 minutes long, and you're just not putting out as much damage as the other melees. That's actually why I swapped off of Dragoon when I was progging Top, because we also had a Reaper who suffers from a similar issue, whereas they just don't have their full gauge at the start of the fight. At least they get Communio. We don't even get Stardiver in our opener. So Reaper's not quite as bad as Dragoon in this regard, but we were just struggling with the damage check. I swapped to Ninja and it was no problem. Obviously it's doable on Dragoon Reaper, but it was just an easy fix. But point being, it's kind of a pain that it works that way. It would be nice if you had your full burst at the start of the fight, as opposed to just the 1 minute mark. So the way I see this is that they could add a single button that would give you 2 eyes immediately. So at the very start of the fight, you could go into your Life of the Dragon window. You could do your full burst, you get your Nostrands out, you'd get your Stardiver out under buffs in your opener. But then you would also have High Jump working as it currently does. Because the way the game currently works, or the way Dragoon currently works, you're able to do back-to-back life windows every 30 seconds, at least 2 in a row currently. But if they gave you the ability to just generate 2 eyes at the push of a button, similar to like Gunbreaker's Bloodfest, where it just fills your gauge, if you could do that and then generate eyes the way that we currently do with High Jump Mirage Dive, you could have a life window every single 30 seconds. You could Stardiver every 30 seconds. So, like, that would just make Dragoon super fun for me. You would be bursting constantly. It wouldn't be your full burst, obviously. You wouldn't be under buffs. But, like, you would be hitting the Strons, like, non-stop throughout the fight. You'd Stardiver on cooldown every 30 seconds. Like, Stardiver's cooldown currently is 30 seconds, so you could be pressing that on cooldown if you had an ability to, just at a whim, generate 2 more eyes. You'd obviously have to route the rotation in a way that lets you get those 2 Mirage Dives after you're already in your life window so that you would hold them for the next one. The same way that we currently do with, holding your life window for buffs. But it would just literally let you do it every 30 seconds. And like I said, you can currently do that, but then you won't have eyes for when your buffs come back up. There are some fights, like I do it in Unreal right now, where if we're going to kill the boss before buffs would come back up, I'll go into another life window early so that I can get like one last Stardiver out outside of buffs at the end of the fight, like if the boss is going to die too quickly. So I think just having the ability to generate those 2 eyes, go into life every 30 seconds, Stardiver every 30 seconds, that would feel like level 100 Dragoon for me. Like that would just take how it currently plays and take it to the next level. My worry is that that doesn't warrant calling it a rework, because you're not really reworking anything. You're just improving how it currently is. So I don't know what they mean by a rework, but I don't know that that's quite enough to call it a rework. I can hope. I think that would be the most fun way to improve on how Dragoon currently plays. Just let you burst more, let you do more damage. Obviously, it would do way more damage than it's currently doing. So there would definitely be some balancing needed. If you're hitting twice as many Stardivers and Nostrons as you currently do, I could see that being a bit of an issue with balance for sure. So maybe that's not realistic. I really don't know. I'm not doing the math on any of this. But it would certainly make the job play really fun, in my opinion. So that's kind of my biggest ask for Dragoon in 7.0 in Dawntrail. Just let us generate eyes. Even if you can't go into life every 30 seconds, I just think some way to like maybe generate eyes out of combat, the way Reaper can do their soul sow, or like Samurai can meditate. If they give us something that lets us generate an eye, because right now in DSR, like getting your jumps out in time on full uptime Savage fights, it's not an issue. Like you'll never run into that issue, but in Ultimate, when the fights go through the different phases, sometimes they just end at a time where like you can't get a jump out that you need. Like if the boss dies too quickly, which is only going to become more of a problem as, you know, we continue to level and get better gear and just outscale the fights, things are going to continue to die quicker, making getting your jumps out at the right time potentially more difficult. We'll have to see. Obviously there are workarounds, but I know in like phase 2 of DSR, the Thornton phase, at the start of the pull, I have to early pull the boss with Gear Skogel high jump before I even hit my first GCD, so that I can get my last high jump Mirage Dive in as the boss is jumping away. And it's like way tighter than it needs to be. I'm pushing it on cooldown as quickly as I can, and Mirage Dive is still ghosting as the boss jumps away. If you don't know what ghosting means, it basically registers on your side, but not on the boss's side. So like my Mirage Dive goes out, but it doesn't do any damage because the boss has already jumped away, but I get my gauge anyway. It's literally that tight. So somehow addressing that would be nice, making it a little bit more relaxed. That is kind of the fun of Dragoon optimization, trying to fit all your jumps into the different phases correctly. But it feels so bad when you don't get them. Like the whole phase is basically ruined for your damage. You can obviously recover it by not using your life window, but like at that point you're just losing so much damage. But you kind of need to realign it with your buffs. So I don't know. I think giving you a button that just generates 2 eyes solves that problem, especially if you could push it outside of combat. That would be really cool. But even if you can't, just being able to generate eyes on command would let you fix rotational errors. It would still obviously be a loss in DPS rather than having the correct number of eyes that you need at the end of a phase or whatever. But I don't know. I think that would be interesting. I think pushing Nostrand and Stardiver more often would just make the job more fun overall. But let me know what you think about that. That's my crackpot theory for Dragoon in 7.0. Another thing I see a lot of people asking for with Dragoon is to put the GCD combo on a single button, kind of like PvP. They do this in PvP where you just press the same button over and over again, and that button cycles through the different combo actions. Combo is a bit different in PvP. You can even see it here if I go to the PvP profile. Like you've got your Wheeling Thrust combo. You only press this one button and it goes through Raiden Thrust, Fang and Claw, and Wheeling Thrust. This is something I don't want them to do. I personally really love having the 2 5-part combos on Dragoon. I think they have the best basic GCD combo of any job in this game, to be honest. Monk also has a very complicated one, but I think Dragoon strikes a good balance between being more involved than just pressing 1, 2, 3 on the other melees, but not being quite as complex as Monk's. I don't think Monk's is terrible, but I don't know. Juggling the buffs and debuffs on Monk it just has more going on than Dragoon for sure. The Dragoon rotation just flows super smoothly, and it's something I really like about the job. It just has the most satisfying base GCD combo before you even start looking at its other abilities. The other thing that they do in PvP that I don't want to see happen is that Chaotic Spring, which is your dot, is completely detached from the main combo. So in PvP, you can just apply your dot to anybody. I believe it's a dot in PvP. Let me double check that actually. No, it's like a lifesteal thing in PvP. But anyway, if they were to detach your dot from your main combo in PvE in Dawntrail, I would not be happy about that. I like how it just sits there in your combo and you hit it naturally and it reapplies in time naturally. I mean, it reapplies every 25 seconds and the dot timer is 24, so you're missing a second, but there's nothing you can do about it. Just doing your combo is like the way to upkeep your dot in time. But if they detached this and made it its own button that you could reapply your dot whenever, you'd have to think about applying your dot while doing all of your other Dragoon stuff. And I think that would just, I would drop my dot so often. So that's not something that I personally want to see. I really want to see them stick to the 10-part combo, the rotating 2 5-piece combos, with the dot staying in there. I really don't want that to be a separate thing. That's just a little thing to mention. Another thing I see a lot of people mention is them putting GCD jumps in. I could maybe see them doing this with Stardiver, or potentially the new level 100 ability, that Nidhogg thing that we saw in the benchmark. But I really don't want any of the other jumps to be GCDs. It's really nice being able to weave them in between stuff. And if you start adding more GCDs, that dot uptime is going to get even worse. Obviously, there's nothing you can do about it if you can't reapply that whenever you want, but I feel like it just breaks the flow of the rotation if you start adding jumps to the GCD. Being able to weave them is really nice. I could maybe even do without spine chatter if they really want to trim up the job a lot. Like, you never use this as a gap closer, you just use it for damage anyway. You just backflip if you need to gap close. So, I don't know. This is kind of an unnecessary button in my opinion, spine chatter. Like, it's fun, don't get me wrong, but if they're really trying to trim things down and get rid of weaves, I'd rather them just get rid of spine chatter or life surge rather than putting jumps on the GCD. Maybe Stardiver could be on the GCD. Maybe the new ability could be on the GCD. I don't know. But I think more than one of them would be too much. So I'd personally rather see them stay how they are. I think it's fun trying to fit everything under the burst. And I really don't think we're going to have too many more things to weave in Dawntrail on top of what we already do. So I don't think jumps on the GCD is necessary or a good idea. I really don't expect that to happen personally, but you never know. Maybe they do. If they're truly reworking the job, maybe we don't even have the same combo that we currently have. Maybe everything's completely different and all we press are jumps. Who knows? Could be interesting. But if things stick to how they are in any sense, I don't see that really happening. Another thing that I often see people talking about that I really don't want to see changed is positionals. A lot of people are speculating that positionals might go away in Dawntrail. I really hope not. I love doing the positionals. I think they're super intuitive in the Dragoon rotation. And we also just got that recent change for Dragon Sight where when this is up, it nullifies any positional requirements anyway. So like during your 2-minute burst when your job is the busiest, you don't even need to go for positionals on Dragoon, which is really nice. Obviously the other melee still run into that issue, but between Dragon Sight and your 2 charges of True North, like, I don't know, positionals are not a big hurdle if you're used to playing melee, in my opinion. It's part of what makes the role fun. And I would really hate to see positionals taken away personally. I think it just adds a whole lot to different fights. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do, especially on Dragoon when you have your backflip. If you're in front of the boss and you need to be behind it, you can backflip over there and get your positional and then get out if you need to. There's a lot of fun optimization there that you would lose by just not needing to go for positionals. Maybe add another charge of True North if you really care, but I don't know. I'm happy with how positionals are currently. But speaking of Dragon Sight, I think it's good how it is, but I could also see them taking the Cardia dance partner route with it, where you just apply it to somebody pre-pull, and then, you know, maybe when you use Litany or something, it gives them that Dragon Sight effect automatically. This would give you less flexibility than you currently have. I know sometimes in like phase 2 of top, Dragoons will give the other melee Dragon Sight and hold their Litany for phase 3. There's different stuff you can do with it in Ultimate. But again, that's super niche. So I think if they made Dragon Sight just like work the same way as Dance Partner, more or less, that could be a fix for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it currently. I like the way that it works. I like manually selecting my target party member every single time. Maybe I'm a complete masochist for not using a macro to do so, but I don't know. I find it fun personally. So I don't know. If they wanted to combine it with, you know, Lance Charge or Litany to activate that Dragon Sight effect and not make you target your partner, I could see that happening. I wouldn't be upset about it either. So I don't know. Maybe a potential change with Dragon Sight, but we'll see. Another thing that may require a change, with mainly because other jobs get updated, is Battle Litany. One thing that a lot of people are asking for is for other jobs to get more guaranteed critical direct hits. In the same way that Warrior and Samurai have guaranteed crit direct hits on some of their moves. It could be kind of cool if Ninja Hyosho always crit, or, you know, other big attacks. Communio would always crit, Stardiver would always crit. It would be nice, maybe. Double Down is a big one. So I don't know if they're going to add that, but if they do, it does kind of devalue Litany, because Litany just increases crit chance. So if everything's guaranteed, there's really no value in Litany on those moves. So a simple fix for that would just be to buff Litany in a sense that maybe it does increased crit damage as well. I believe that's how I believe it only currently increases the chance. I could be wrong about this. I don't know all the specifics, but if I'm wrong, please correct me on that. But if so, you know, those guaranteed crits would devalue it a little bit. So just changing the way Litany applies crit and maybe just buffs the crit damage as well would easily solve that problem and keep it super valuable, even if they start adding guaranteed crit direct hits to a bunch of different jobs. But again, that's all dependent on what they do with those other jobs as well. And it's also very likely that they may just not do that for those other jobs, and it's not an issue. So just something else I thought I would note. So we'll see what happens with those crits. But the way things are currently working, crits kind of fluctuate your damage a bit more than they should, but it's really not a huge deal. But it could be if they, you know, start messing with things like just all those guaranteed ones and, you know, having Litany applied and not doing much. So something to think about. Another thing with Dragoon that I really don't think they should mess with is the AOE combo. I think it's perfect the way it is. I really love the line AOEs on the base GCD combo. Coupling that with your Skogul, Nastrand, and Wormwind, it's just super fun to kind of like herd the mobs in dungeons and, you know, hit them with the lines from the right angles. I think Dragoon AoE is insane right now, so it really does not need a buff. There's not much else to say about the AoE combo. You know, it is what it is with the addition of Wormwind and generating that extra gauge from doing your combo. I think that's in a really good spot. Not something that really needs to be changed. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with Dragoon is kind of just my predictions for the future. What they're going to be adding, what new skills. Obviously, we saw that big Nidhogg explosion from the ground where he comes out of the ground. Looks awesome. I'm kind of hoping that's not like a Communio situation where you have to cast it. That would be incredibly painful. But I could see that being a GCD. I could see it being another weave potentially, depending on if they narrow down some of the other weaves. Who knows? It looks like it's just going to be another big damage level 100 skill. If we go and look at the actions that we got from the past few expansions, like our big capstone abilities for Endwalker, it was Wormwind, which is not the most exciting. It looks cool, but it didn't really add a whole lot. Then we had Stardiver, which is, in my opinion, the Dragoon skill. That's by far the most satisfying button to push. But outside of those two, like, we really didn't get much other than recolors of abilities. Like, sure, we got our third part of our AoE combo, which is fine. It's just another line AoE. We got a recolored jump. We got a recolor on Heaven's Thrust. Chaotic Spring is just a recolor. When I say recolor, I mean, like, sure, it got some damage upgrades, but it functions the same. It's in the same place. Raiden Thrust, obviously, just a recolor of True Thrust. So, I don't know. I'm sure we'll get some more of that. Maybe they'll upgrade Vorpal Thrust and Disembowel. Those are, like, the only two. I don't see them really touching Fang and Claw or Wheeling. Maybe they do, but those are pretty iconic as well, so I don't think those are going to change. So, yeah, I don't know. We really didn't get too much at the end of Endwalker or Shadowbringers outside the big capstone abilities. Like, I'm not expecting anything crazy other than that big Nidhogg skill and then maybe some recolors. Like, unless they drastically change how the job functions, I could see some big changes to Life of the Dragon potentially. It's just impossible to say at this point, honestly. We have no idea what to expect out of this rework. Those were my predictions. I'm really looking forward to that new Nidhogg skill. That looks awesome. I think there are ways to smooth out and improve just the basic Dragoon rotation, like I talked about. I do think it plays extremely well right now. I don't think it needs a rework. Just maybe some minor tweaks going into the upper levels now. But I'm pretty happy with it overall. We'll see what comes of it. And I will just leave it at that, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you are incredibly stressed about this Dragoon rework. I think it'll end up being cool one way or another. We'll see if it gets the summoner treatment or not. I'm just hoping it's not horrible. I'm open to, you know, new things, new ideas for Dragoon, but we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, it's still going to look like a cool, fun job to play. If things change drastically, they've always done a pretty good job with the melee in this game, so I'm hopeful at the least. There's one other thing I wanted to shout out before I wrap up this video, and that is if you are watching this shortly after I release this video, I'm planning on streaming over on Twitch, so there's a high likelihood I am live right now if you're watching this video on release or the day or two afterwards. Planning on streaming all weekend. So check the link in the description for my Twitch channel. Head over there. If I'm not live, just drop a follow. I would really appreciate it. But if I am live, say hi and come hang out. So planning on getting into that a whole lot more moving forwards. And I'm really looking forward to it. A bit stressed out about it as well. So we'll see how it goes. But come hang out, say hi, drop a follow. I really appreciate everybody for watching these videos. This was a bit of a fun one to make, just speculating on Dragoon. It's probably my favorite job in the game right now, so I'm on the fence just like everybody else. I can't wait to see what they do in Dawntrail. But we still got about 2 months to go until we find out. Maybe that job action trailer will give us a better idea, but we'll see. So catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.